right. Well, welcome everybody to this Q&A with legendary drum educator and player Mike Packer. Welcome, Mike, to the Melodics community. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Man, it's great to be here with you and everybody else in the community.
Fantastic. The way we're going to run this hour is we've had lots of questions come in from our community that
Awesome.
we're going to be throwing at you, and those will lead to some, I'm sure, some very interesting discussions. And we've also got the chat function live here on Discord. So if any live questions come in, plus we've had lots of actually questions from employees here at Melodics that want to know things from you as well. So.
Awesome.
Um, Hey, the first thing we want to know is, and everyone's got a journey that got them into playing the drums. So we'd love to know, you've been educating, you've been playing, you've been inspiring other drummers for over 30 years. What's your drumming journey? What got you into playing the drums?
Yeah, sure. Actually, you know what? It's kind of weird. I just always wanted to play. And I don't know why or how. I mean, nobody else in my immediate family was musically inclined. So it was a little strange, but I just always had that passion in my gut to want to try. And when I was 11, I remember getting my first snare drum and starting lessons in fifth grade. And I went through public schools, all through elementary, middle school, and high school here in the states, and was super privileged and lucky to have really good band programs everywhere I went. And so I took advantage of that. And because of it, I was able to play in concert band, marching band, orchestra, jazz band. I had my own rock bands on the outside. And I was able to really immerse myself in it. And, you know, it also became a social scene for me as well. A lot of my friends were in band and we moved around a lot. So I was able to meet people easily that way because we always had something in common. So then after I finished high school, I ended up going to college to study music. I studied percussion performance at University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, which happened to have a really good jazz department. So again, another situation where I was playing in probably 10 to 12 ensembles every semester and then had a rock band that was gigging on the outside.
Nice.
Um, all the while, I always knew that I was going to go to LA after I graduated college and try and make a go of it as a player, hopefully a studio player and a live player, and also as an educator. And so when I graduated, I threw my junk in the car, drove out, and I've been in LA ever since. So it's what, 32 years now. Um, and it's been great. It's been very much ups and downs, and every day's a learning experience. Um, but as I threw myself into the pool, I started gradually teaching and gradually meeting a lot of people and playing gigs and developing a freelance career. All the while, I was studying with pros in town who were, the best players and the best educators in town. Um, and everything picked up steam gradually, right? Each year the gigs got a little better, the teaching opportunities got a little better. Um, and yeah, it all kind of was rolling and rolling and rolling. And then in 2007, I was teaching at one of three schools. This school was called the LA Music Academy, which is now Los Angeles College of Music. And I was faculty member there, and the president asked me if I wanted to join the administration. And I had never had any designs to do an administrative gig. But as soon as he mentioned 2 weeks vacation and a salary, I was like, yeah, let's try it. Because I had never had that before. And so I ended up going into administration and teaching still as well and playing. And it was cool because, you know, my whole scene is kind of about making a positive impact on people's lives, and obviously doing that through teaching is pretty cut and dry, right? You try and help your students as much as you possibly can, but when you get into an administrative role, you can make a larger impact because now you're touching people that you wouldn't have had access to just in the classroom. So that was super cool, and I ended up loving that. Um, all the while, I was still playing teaching, writing a lot of curriculum, and I actually invented a bass drum pedal and ended up licensing that to DW in 2007. So, um, yeah, just a lot of different hats and kind of traveling through my career with an entrepreneurial spirit and, you know, trying to get involved with whatever inspired me and was passionate.
Yeah, nice. And actually, that bass drum pedal is actually the it's the subject of a few of our future questions
Sure.
later on later on
Cool.
here. Um,
Cool.
hey, you mentioned throwing your junk in the car. Like, drummers are gearheads, and everyone has a gear journey. Like, what were your first what was your first set of drums like? What were you playing, and what have you evolved to over the years? What do you like to play?
Well, let's just say I've definitely evolved. Um, my first drum set was called a CB 700, and I don't know if anybody's heard of them. Actually, it's interesting. You know the drummer Taylor Hawkins,
Yes.
formerly Foo Fighters. He had on his bass drum head, he had written CB 700 in honor of one of his first drum sets, which was a CB 700, and it was one of mine too. Um, not a great drum set, but it was, something kind of a step up from hitting pots and pans and things like that. Um, when I first got more of my first serious kit, it was a Pearl, and it was a Pearl Export at the time, and it was concert toms. So it was totally a Phil Collins kit, right? It was 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, all concert toms on top. So that was great, and then I graduated to Sonar, and it was a Sonar Light kit that I actually have stacked up behind me over there, the wood drums. Um,
Nice.
gorgeous drums that I got when I was in high school, and it literally was I went into the music store, the local music store by my house in Chicago, and they were literally stacked in a corner, and it was like my heart just sank. I'm like, I've got to get those drums. They were gorgeous. Um, so I played Sonar for a long time, and then in 2006, 2007, when I was working with DW on licensing the pedal, I ended up switching and becoming a DW artist as well, and have been there ever since. Love them. And for cymbals, I play Zildjian. I have played Zildjian forever, and just it's the sound I hear in my head, and love them. They're great.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, we love Zildjian here at Melodics as well. So, hey, so just staying on gear, because gear's really interesting to us, because we're in the world of trying to make drumming practice easy and fun and enjoyable. And gear's a big part of that. We've got everything from practice pads through to our history, which is with electronic drums, and through to our present now, which is now where we support acoustic drums. What do you what's your when you're working as an educator, how do you suggest people set themselves up in terms of how they practice on pads and electronic drums and acoustic drums, to have the best chance of success?
Yeah. Well, as far as, what to play, whether it's acoustic drums or electronic drums, I think it somewhat has to do with the person's situation, right? If you're living in an apartment and you don't have the ability to play acoustic drums, obviously electronic drums are much better for you. Um, and there's great electronic drums that are out now. Obviously, through the years, they've improved in feel and sensitivity and obviously the sounds that you can get with the brain. Um, so whether they're electronic or acoustic, I always recommend to students that they set themselves up properly at the kit, whatever that is. So obviously, it starts with the throne height. So I sit so that my thighs are at a slight angle downward, so that I can play the bass drum pedal and my thigh would never come higher than parallel to the ground. Because when it comes parallel to the ground, then I start to lean back a little bit and I get some pressure in my lower back. And if I sit too high, it ends up hurting my thighs. So that's the first thing. And then I always tell my students and live by the saying that the drums set up to me, I don't set up to the drums. So, everybody's setup is going to be organic to them, to their physical makeup, right? I'm fairly short and I like smaller drums and I like things a little bit more compact. So once I've got the throne height dealt with, then the next thing that I do is I put my foot on the bass drum pedal and figure out the distance between the throne and the bass drum. And ultimately, what you want to look for is when you have your foot on the sweet spot of the bass drum pedal, and that is the spot where you get the most rebound and the most control. Once your foot's there, you should set up so that your knee is just behind your ankle, right? If you set up and your knee is over your ankle, you're going to be sitting too close and you're going to not have maximum um, use of the bass drum beater, which means you're going to lose out on volume, right? If you sit too far back, you're going to have a ton of range for the beater, but you're not going to be able to control it as well. So you want to be right on that sweet spot and then sit just a little bit behind the ankle, and that should be your best place to maximize everything. Then you throw the hi-hat in, and I put my left foot on the hi-hat. Actually, that's a little different than the bass drum because with the bass drum, you want to generate and control rebound. With the hi-hat, you're not generating and controlling rebound. So you actually want the weight of your leg over your ankle so that when you put your weight down, it closes the hi-hat cymbals. And you don't have to work too hard to do it. It's super natural. So what happens in reality is that the hi-hat ends up being a little bit closer to you than the bass drum. At least that's how I set it up. From there, snare drum. So I throw the snare drum in and I just put my hands up. And when I put my hands up, naturally, I want to be about half an inch to 2/3 of an inch off of the drum head. If I'm there and I can play any type of sound that I want on the snare drum, play on the head, play on the edges, play a rim shot without hitting my legs, then that's cool. From there, I just put the toms in so that everything's close and really comfortable to hit. I want to be able to go and do this and not have to reach super far for anything. Because if I have to reach far, then I'm creating tension and I'm creating pressure in parts of my body. And that's going to end up affecting me down the road. Um, so then same thing with cymbals. I like them to be closer and easy to get to. So like I have a crash here that's kind of right over my rack tom, and I can hit it easily. I can hit the tom easily, but I can go between them very easily. I don't have to reach way up here to do it. So that's kind of my thought process. And so whether it's acoustic drums or electronic drums, it's kind of the same for me, really.
Nice. As you've been saying this, I've been finding my legs and my heels all going into position. So my hands, can I hit my legs? Actually, I had a drum teacher tell me once that the two most, and I want your take on this, the two most important parts of your drum kit, and I was like, oh, it's going to be the crash, or it's going to be. He's like, it's the throne and it's the hi-hat stand. You've got to have a great throne and you've got to have a great hi-hat stand. I was like, that's rubbish. You throne, what does the throne matter? But actually, I can totally relate to that. As I've gotten older, it's like the throne is almost the most important part of the drum set.
Yeah, he was totally right. Um, if you look at it, it's like the throne and the bass drum pedal and the hi-hat pedal create a tripod. And it's like if you have a secure tripod where you're not rocking around, you're very balanced and you're very comfortable, you should be able to play anything that you want to play at any time, right? And that's really the main goal with our instrument because our instrument is 99% improvisational. Sometimes we read charts and we play things that are specific, but most of the time we're improvising. And so you want to have a super secure foundation so that you can play whatever you want to play and articulate it cleanly at any time. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Nice. Well, hey, so staying on practice, where does the practice pad fit into your world? Like, do you, if you're traveling, do you always have one? Do you always like to just break it out when you're, watching some TV or anything? Just, be jamming along on a practice pad.
Yeah, I mean these days, I try and get 10 to 15 minutes of pad work every day.
Cool.
I come into the office every morning and I just try and start with that. Um, A, to just keep my hands warm, but B, it's kind of meditative for me, right? So if you're just sitting there and you're practicing an exercise, you can feel your mind going and it's a good way to start the day. So that's kind of what I do now. It's funny when I'm on gigs, usually if I have any time to warm up, I'm just literally playing an exercise or 2 on my leg and going through something so that my hands are warm and then I can go ahead and start. But as I was coming up through my development, I did a lot of pad work. And it was definitely part of the routine almost all the time where I would try and dedicate 20 minutes to a half hour in the beginning of my practice just to warm up and get things together and then take that to the drum set.
Nice. And staying on kind of that practice theme, at Melodics, we're all about trying to ease the way into practice, make practice interesting, make practice just a daily, repetitive, fun thing to do.
Yep.
What do you suggest when you've got new students or anything that are coming to you and wanting advice about how to do practice? What are the key things that you suggest for making practice fun?
That's a great question. And it is super important to make it fun because it has to be fun, it has to be engaging for you to want to keep coming back and getting better. So what I like to do, if I'm taking students through a lesson, it's really in some ways kind of you have to eat your peas and then you get your dessert, right? So you have to do some of the exercises that are more deliberate practice to get you to improve. But then there needs to be fun at the end of that. And I think fun, at least always for me, fun was playing the music. Fun was play-alongs or playing with musicians. So, and that's one of the things that I really love about Melodics and Drum Channel, who obviously I'm very fortunate to work with and have content on there with the Drum Channel method. Um, but I love the fact that your methods circles around play-alongs, and there's deliberate practice involved. You're giving instant feedback, whether it's electronic drums or acoustic drums. So there is a very serious practice element involved, but it's all based around fun. And I think that's really, really important. I didn't grow up practicing that way. I grew up practicing more like really, you know, but I always left myself time to just throw music on and play. And maybe I wasn't getting the most out of it as far as my development goes, but it sure was fun. And, it was the thing that I looked forward to the most.
Nice. Did you have a go-to track that's like, right, I've done my 40 minutes of practice, I've done my exercises, now I get a little bit of dessert, I get that special treat. Did you have a go-to track?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I tried. There were a few. Growing up, I was definitely a Rush fan. So attempted to play a lot of those tunes. Um, there were a lot of drummers that I grew up idolizing and loving, and obviously Neil was one. Steve Smith was another one. So a lot of Journey stuff I would try and play. Simon Phillips was one. So the stuff that he did with Pete Townsend was incredible. I tried that. Um, who else? I mean, Vinny, of course, Steve Gadd. And then on the jazz side, or more of the swing and bebop side, was certainly, Max Roach and Tony Williams and Art Blakey and people like that. So I would play to all of those guys. And then actually the one that I forgot, who was probably the most influential, was Jeff Porcaro. And so, attempting to play anything from Boss Skaggs to Toto to, Go West or anybody that he was working with, I would always try, just because I loved his pocket and still do, and love the placement of where he put the backbeat. Just really kind of feels like home to me, and so I always tried to practice that and emulate that.
Nice. Yeah, we've got some Toto and Melodics, and I'm still
Yep.
I'm still not on top of Roseanne. I still can't ace it. So that's one of the end of my practice sessions. Just trying to slowly
Yep.
increase my score on that one. She's a tricky one.
Yep. Totally.
Hey, okay, so let's talk about we've already sort of slightly mentioned your invention, which is the heelless bass pedal, and that's
Yep.
led. First of all, I want you to kind of describe what led you into to making that invention, and then the collaboration with the manufacturer, and then actually talk to us about heel up versus heel down bass technique, because there's been a lot of
Mhm.
questions from the community about that. So
Yep.
yeah.
Cool. Well, the bass drum pedal, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I could actually invent something and actually see it come to life. Um, but really, it all started with an idea, and I just was super frustrated because, you know, most pedals had really high heel plates. And even the DW 5000 and the 9000, not only were they high, but they had a sharp edge at the back. So every time I dropped my heel, I would hit that thing. And it was sometimes painful, but I just kept thinking that, man, this is really getting in my way. And why is it here? It doesn't need to be there. And so, an analogy that I can show is like, imagine if this is, here, I'll put my pad up. If this is a drum, right? And so I'm going to play the drum, but there's something that's blocking me from actually doing my full stroke. Let's say there's a table or something here. And so I can hit the drum, but I can't do the full motion. That's going to affect the sound, right? I'm not going to get the full volume and I'm not going to get the full frequencies of the drum because I don't have that follow through. So if you remove that, now I can do the full stroke and I'm getting all the benefits of that. Well, it turns out the heel plate is that. It's the thing that's getting in your way. So I just was always like, I wonder what it would be like if that wasn't there. So, and this part of the story is actually kind of funny. Um, I was living in California at the time, but I was back in Colorado hanging with some of my college buddies and all drummers, but started working in different industries. And I was telling them about my idea, and one of the guys who was working um, in he was working for a company called Boa Technologies, and they do like biking shoes and ski boots and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I get it. I can do a CAD drawing for you of that, and we can get that made." I'm like, "That's incredible." So I go through and I start doing that with him, and I know that I got to try and deal with the process of getting it patented. And I was on a gig in Chicago. I was working with two songwriters, and we were out there doing a record with them. And I was telling him about my idea, and one of the songwriters is like, "Well, I'm a patent attorney, so I'll help you." And I was like, "Great." So between those two guys, I had a little team and was able to get a prototype done and was actually able to get it patented. And so somebody's asking if we can show it on the screen. Are you guys able to, or you want me to just go grab one and I can hold it up?
Yeah, if you could just go grab one, that would be
Hey,
amazing.
give me 2 seconds.
Nice. Thank you, Uberzin. Nice. Good question. I'd assumed he had one just sitting behind him as well. Here
Okay,
we go.
so this one is the prototype. So this is the first one that I did, and it's actually this is the invention here. This is a DW9000. So I took the base plate and the footboard off of the 9000 and put mine on. But this thing feels incredible. It's super light and it's super fast. And that turned out to be this, which is actually out on the market now. It's the DW5000 keyless. And it's out. You can get it as a single pedal, a double pedal. It feels really great. But the thing is, when you're playing it, you go right down to the floor. You're not
Right.
up here like this.
Got
And
it.
that makes all the difference to me in the world. And actually, it's funny because I took the prototype out on a gig that I was playing, a rock gig, and it was a regular gig that I was doing, and the sound guy literally had to turn the gain on my bass drum mic down by 50% when I used that pedal. It was that much of a difference. Only because I could complete my full stroke and the beater was coming back that much farther. And I was getting the full range of fundamentals of the drum. So it was pretty significant. So then after I did that and it was patent pending, I approached some different manufacturers, all the ones that you would imagine, the big ones. And DW was the only one that would talk to me while it was patent pending. So, and fortunately, they're here, right? They're in Oxnard, which is about an hour from where I live. And so I was able to go up and take a meeting and show them and develop that relationship. Um, and eventually they agreed to do it. And so, yeah, it's still out. I was at Pro Drum Shop yesterday and saw a double pedal there for sale. So it's still out there and doing well.
Nice. Well, congratulations on an
Thank
awesome
you.
invention and having a real impact on the industry.
Thank
So
you.
we had a follow-up question from someone in the community, Holas, just a related question about double bass. So,
Uh-huh.
in terms of technique, toe heel technique or the toe slide technique, should you use both in different time or even just commit to one? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, great question. Um, for me, it's all about there are four primary strokes that you use to play the bass drum. How you use them, when you use them is totally up to you as long as you get what you need to get, right? So for me, it's a toe or heel down, right? Your heel's on the heel plate or the ground and you're just pivoting. There's that one. There's a leg stroke, there's an ankle stroke, and then there's an upstroke. And all of them provide different sound qualities, right? So you can play any of them at any volume, totally soft to super loud, doesn't matter, but they all have different sound qualities. And so if you start with the lowest, you have the toe stroke, right? So heel down. And that's going to provide a nice an open tone and not a lot of attack. It's not super powerful. The next one up is the leg stroke. That provides a nice open sound as well, but it is really powerful because you got the full weight of your leg, right? The next one is the ankle stroke, and I play that when I need to play fast notes in a row. Okay, and so again, any volume, any sound quality, fast notes. And then the upstroke is kind of a bridge stroke that if you're combining any of those motions, you throw an upstroke in there as well. So to answer the question, heel toe, heel swivel, any of that stuff, ultimately, whatever works for you is great as long as you're getting what you need to get. I personally, and this is just a personal thing, I know people do it, but I personally don't use a swivel or a slide. And I don't because I feel like I lose control when I do. The four strokes that I mentioned, I feel like I have the most control over. So that's where I kind of live in my range. Um, Sliding for me, if I need to play fast doubles, I can do it ankle down. If I slide, then that forces me to play it into the head. And most of the time, I want to play with the beater coming off of the head because that gives a bigger sound. Okay. So that's why I don't do it personally. Swivel for me is just a little bit too much motion. If I could do it and if I could play the same thing and minimize the motion, that's how I'm going to do it. So at the end of the day, it's whatever works for you. But what I would do probably in that scenario that you're talking about is heel toe.
Right. Um, cool. I mean, I never knew there was so much we could talk about feet.
Oh
But,
yeah,
you know,
I
it's
know.
fundamental of playing the drums. I'll make this our last feet question. But we've got
Okay.
a question from Thierry that when he plays with both feet at the same time, so his hi-hat pedal and his kick, he needs one of those two to be heeled down, otherwise he's off balance. He was
Yeah.
wondering if this was due to his stool with the thigh indentations that prevented me from resting on something, or is it just because I wasn't close enough to my pedals? That was his question.
Yeah, great question and great point. Um, so you want to be able to sit on the throne and have all of your weight on your seat, on your rear end. So you need a strong core and you need to be able to be very secure in that so that you can move your legs at any time in any structure, any fashion. You don't want to use either leg for balance. And so it sounds like his problem is, if he's moving his right leg, his left leg has to be down so he doesn't fall over. So, and that's a totally common problem. So I would say, first of all, check out the throne height, check out the distance to your pedals that we talked about. If all of that's cool, look at developing your core a little bit more so that when you sit, you can have really good balance, and that'll allow you to move both legs either, you know, um, separately or in unison. Okay.
Okay, cool. We'll pass it on. Thierry is actually he's a pretty famous user of ours. He's the king of memory mode. So he's
Awesome.
I think he's leading our community in the number of memory perfects he's getting on Melodics. So
Oh,
thanks for the
wow. That's
question, Thierry.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Let's go on to some piece about rudiments. So we've
Yep.
had a question come in from the community about: do you have a favorite rudiment, or do you have a least favorite or a hardest rudiment that you work on when you're practicing?
Yeah. Yes and yes. Um, my least favorite hardest rudiment is something called an inverted flam tap. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It is so a flam tap is right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, and then the first right and the first left is a flam.
Nice.
And because really what that is if I split my hands, I'm playing 3 notes in a row. So you can get that pretty fast if you're using rebound. But an inverted flam is right this. So you have flam, and then with the left, you do left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. So right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. So basically, what's happening again, if I split my hands, it's 3 notes in a row, but the accent's in the last note. So now it's instead of where the accent or the stress is on the first note. So that took me a long time to try and develop.
Yeah.
And I can't play that nearly as fast as I can do the regular flam taps, but that's one that kind of turns me upside down. Um, I think one of my favorites is a Swiss Army triplet. Do you know that one?
I do not. No, no. Educate us.
So it's a group of 3 notes, And so you could think of it as triplets. And then it's flam. So starting with the right hand, flam, and then right, then left. Flam, right, left. And this one's really easy to get faster because if you split your hands,
Yeah.
you're just playing two notes. So really what you're playing is a roll
Yeah.
because you're just diddling, but you're kind of overlaying it on that flam. That's why you're able to get it faster because you're really just playing. So that's a fun one to do. And one of the reasons why I like it too is there's great applications on the drum set for it. So I think a lot of the rudiments that I like the most translate to the drum set easily and really well. Some of the ones that I don't like as much, like an inverted flam tap or the flamacue, they don't translate as well to the drum set. So I think that's why it's not something that I do a lot.
So that's really interesting. So tell us about how you translate that world of rudiments into, is it the world of fills? Is it the world of ghosts? How does that translation happen in your mind?
Yeah, great question. So it's all about developing vocabulary, right? So just as we're talking to each other, we're talking in the English language, and I'm able to express my ideas and my thoughts hopefully clearly, um, and we're having a conversation. When you're playing music, it's the exact same thing, right? Music is a language, and to play that language or to speak in that language with ideas, you have to develop your vocabulary. Just like learning letters and learning words and learning sentences and paragraphs and all that stuff. So I look at rudiments as a very important, critical part of drumming vocabulary, right? Let's take it to probably the most basic one, which is a paradiddle. So paradiddle is right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. Okay. So basically two singles and a double. Well, everything that we do on the drum set is a combination of singles and doubles. So that one translates incredibly well in fills, in solos, even in grooves. You can play just paradiddles and put your right hand on the hi-hat and your left hand on the snare drum and play a groove, and it sounds good. Um, so I think it's all about developing that vocabulary and using the rudiments to then, put them on the drum set and see what they sound like, see what words you're creating. I when I was first learning drums, my very first drum teacher made me memorize all the rudiments before I could even look at a drum set. And I tell you, I wasn't a happy camper then, and he kind of pissed me off, but I see the value in it now. Um, because when I got to the drum set, I already had vocabulary that I could rely on. I think if I was teaching me then, what I would have done is taken the vocabulary and tried to apply it right away. So instead
Yeah.
of doing all of them and then coming over, I'd say, okay, this is a paradiddle. You play the paradiddle on the pad. Now let's go over to the drum set and see how you can play it there
Yeah.
and make that connective tissue. Um, but at any rate, it allowed me to get a really good handle on that rudimental vocabulary.
And it clearly didn't put you off playing the drums, so that's that's
You know
good.
what though? It almost did. It almost did. When
Okay.
I was in when I was in 6th grade, I remember this. When I was in 6th grade, so I was like, what, 12, 11, 12 years old, I wanted to quit because I wasn't playing the drum set, and that's what I wanted to do. And literally, the teacher called my parents and said, "Don't let him quit. He's good. You should keep on him." Um, so I stayed with it. We ended up moving to Denver, and I got a teacher who put me on drum set right away. And so that was it.
Nice. Well, thank you for not quitting. And I think we have the same mission here at Melodics. We're about just helping people to continue with their instrument and to not get to that point where they quit. So
Yep,
um,
100%.
we've actually also just had a live question come in here, which is related to rudiments. It's a question from Alessandro about flams. So, do you play flams on the beat or just a little bit before the beat, as it's written in all the books? How do you what's the exact timing of a flam?
Yeah, great question, Alessandro. Um, so the way that I like to think about flams is that you have a grace note and then you have a primary note, right? The primary note's the loud note, the grace note is the soft note. The primary note should be right on the beat.
Got it.
The grace note, you can play with it a little bit, right? So if you play it close to the primary note, everything's right on the beat, okay? But then if you want to make the flam a little bit wider, or what we call a fat flam, you can play with it and play it the soft note a little bit louder and a little bit ahead, and that gives the note more length or more substance. So as an example, um, if I do this, so those are just normal flams, soft note close together. But if I want to start playing it out, see the difference? Fatter. So what happens is all of those applications are used on the drum set. So when you play just a normal flam, you can play around the drums and it's all totally cool. But there are times where you want that fat flam sound, which is really like imagine like doing a big fill on the snare drum, brah, playing rock and it's just something like that. That can be a fat flam with a rim shot and it sounds huge. If you played it as a normal flam, it wouldn't sound as big. So you can play with it depending on what you want, but just a regular old flam, the primary note is on the beat, the grace note or the soft note is as close as you can make it to the primary note.
Okay, nice. Love the term fat flam. I never heard that one before. I'm
Yep.
picturing I'm picturing Dave Grohl in the '90s. Like some real early Nirvana. I think he was pretty fat on his flams. So if I
Actually, that's a great point, Mike. Think of the intro fill to "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
yeah.
Fat flams on the snare drum all day.
Yeah, nice.
That's a perfect example of it.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, we've also had another question in here from the community, which kind of related because we talked about the how the flams are written in the books. So, thoughts on learning drum notation? That's a question in from Birds. Lots of drummers have different trajectories to their learning. Some never look at stave notation. Some love to look at stave notation.
Mhm.
Yeah, give us your thoughts. How do you advise your students?
Yeah. Um, for me, I think reading drum notation is super important. And it is because it allows you to be able to communicate with the other musicians you're playing with. If you're playing with other musicians, right? I mean, if you're just playing play-alongs by yourself and you don't need to, then you don't need to. That's fine. But if you have the desire and the passion to play in bands and maybe even try and make a career out of playing music, I think you absolutely need to read music because that's the one common thing that everybody can relate to, right? So imagine if you're, in a recording session or if you're playing for an artist and they have a specific thing that they want to tell you about a specific point in the song. They can look and say, okay, second verse, bar 36, beat 2, I want you to play this. Perfect. I got it. Make my note. Done. But if you can't communicate with them on that level, then it's like, yeah, in this part of the song, I want you to do this here, but they can't really tell you where it is, and you can't really necessarily understand where it is. So I think it's super important to learn. Do you have to learn it to play drums? No, absolutely not. But if you have the desire to take it to another level, to communicate with other musicians and potentially even play professionally, then I think yes, absolutely.
Yeah, nice. What was your journey with stave notation? When did you start
Mhm.
start to understand the visual language of stave?
It's funny, right away, right in 5th grade when I first started, we were reading music. And all through school, it was always reading. So, that's one of the real benefits that I had growing up with that privilege, is that every day I was reading music. So it wasn't necessarily something that I had to really stress about when I went to college or anything like that. It was like I'd done it for 10 years. So I already had a good foundation of it. And then, of course, doing it in college, by the time that I graduated college and came out to LA, I was a pretty good reader. There weren't a lot of things that would trip me up for the type of work that I was doing and everything. I was pretty cool. Um, so yeah, I think it was important, but fortunately for me, I was started at a young age and I just did it all the time.
Nice. And we've just had some live chat in here from some drum chum who does wish that Melodics had the option for stave notation, and just want to respect that comment. Look, we've been experimenting with ways that we can take our visual language towards stave for quite some time, and we do hear that user feedback a lot, and we respect it. So yeah, we definitely do understand that lots of our users have that desire for stave, and we are looking at ways that we can integrate it into our experience as well, for sure. So
Very
um,
cool.
we hear you guys. Okay, so a question in here from Alex. So, who have been some of your favorite artists to work with at Drum Channel? And do you have any dream collabs that if you could pull one together, yeah, who would it be?
Wow. We're so lucky at Drum Channel because we have access to so many incredible artists and players. Um, Meeting and hanging with Thomas Lang was a really fun one for me. He was at the studio one day and his kit was set up and everything, and he's like, "Sit down on the set, play." So I just got to sit down, and it was awesome because obviously his setup was so different than my normal setup. It was kind of a kid in a candy store. I was playing all this stuff and just playing differently than I normally play, but it was super fun. Another experience like that is with Terry Bozzio, who is a regular at Drum Channel. And obviously, if you know anything about Terry Bozzio, his setups are very unique. Um, so, yeah, definitely meeting and hanging with him has been incredible. And with him, especially because he was a huge influence on me growing up. I loved his playing with the Brecker brothers and with Missing Persons and Zappa. So, um, yeah, he was pretty incredible. I'd say one last one would be Simon Phillips. Again, such a great guy, incredible player, and um, he has so many stories. And just listening to him tell stories, and some of his stories are about tracks that I idolized growing up, and so just really cool to hear that, to be able to talk to them.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, Drum Channel. It's an absolute it's a haven of so many amazing drummers and amazing collabs. It's yeah, you
Yeah,
can get in there for days and still not
yeah,
get through.
it's definitely a rabbit hole you can go around because there's just so much incredible content.
Yeah, totally. Okay, live question in here from some drum chum. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So, as an advanced intermediate drummer trying to push into solidly advanced, I'm sometimes overwhelmed by the amount of things I could be working on. Flow, extending vocab, soloing. So my question is, how do you manage information overload when pushing past plateaus?
Yeah, great question. Great, great, great. Um, what I always tried to do for me was I would try and practice four things, four topics at the same time. And so, in some of my most effective practicing periods in my life, I would practice for at least 4 hours a day, and each hour would be one specific thing. So, like, hour one is technique, hour two is grooves, hour three is jazz vocabulary, hour four is Latin drumming, just let's say. Um, the reason why I did it that way is because I knew those were all things that I needed to work on. And because with drumming and with music, so many things are interconnected, right? So what I did with technique influenced everything else. Chances are the jazz soloing stuff that I was working on could also infiltrate into any of the Latin drumming that I was doing. So there was a lot of connective tissue going in and out. Um, but the important thing is that I left myself enough time to really get into it. And then as soon as the time was up, I left it. So once that first hour was up, I was done with technique, regardless of where I was and what I wanted to accomplish. I would go right to the next thing. And the whole, I guess, strategy behind that is that it's it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? So I'm going to get the value of practicing. Let's say I practice 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. I'm going to get the value of practicing 5 hours of technique for a week and not doing it 5 hours or 4 hours in one day. Because if I do it 4 hours in one day, then I'm going to lose before I touch it again. But the continuity of doing it at least a little bit every day really allows you to rise and really allows you to progress. So that's really the best way that I handled something like that because I was working on a lot of different things and it allowed me to get inside of it, but not kill myself and burn out. Um, the other thing that I would do too is I would practice and then take breaks. So I would practice, let's say, of those 4 hours, I would do 2 hours in the morning, take a break at lunch, and then 2 hours in the afternoon. And that was super manageable for me.
Right. So the key there that you're saying is it's kind of regular practice rather than just trying to dedicate massive blocks and trying to achieve something in that block. It's about coming back to it in regular chunks. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. You get much more benefit from the cumulative approach as opposed to just focusing on one thing at one time and then leaving it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, when I was teaching in the schools, um, at the universities and at LACM, we would tell our students that all the time, where it's like you want to practice if you're taking 5 classes, you want to practice, a half hour, 45 minutes of each class every day. And that's where you're going to really start so that by the time you get to that next class that next week, think of it as your private lesson or whatever, you're going to have put in 4, 5, 6 hours of time just by doing those chunks per day. So you almost, you put in the time that way to improve kind of naturally. It just happens.
Yeah. Nice. Um, yeah. So we've just had a comment in here. This is from Sam at Melodics. Can you apply that thinking to 20 minutes a day? We see at Melodics, we're all about regular practice, and our default that we try to get all of our learners to do is 5 minutes a day.
Right.
And I think
Right.
Sam's trying to push that up to 20 minutes. But yeah, again, regular practice is built into our ethos as well.
Sure. And yeah, you absolutely can. It's just a different scale, right? So let's
Yeah.
say you're practicing a tune on melodics, right? And you're having trouble with the verse and you're having trouble with the chorus. 10 minutes on the verse, 10 minutes on the chorus each day. And then 3, 4 days from now, you'll be able to play that song, go through it, you're good, and then you go on to the next. So yeah, it's totally the same ethos. You just have to structure it in A, the amount of time that you have to dedicate to practicing, and B, what you want to practice.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And there was just a comment there from some drum chum, I think, referring back to the stave notation comment, if you need any beta testers, yes, we do. So I'm going to drop you a line, all right? So it's on for beta testing on our journey towards stave. We've had a question coming in. We're kind of coming to the end, but the questions are still coming in, which is a great sign, Mike. So from Iburzin, what techniques do you use to maintain rhythm and timing during performance? That's a
Yeah.
goodie. That's a
That's
great.
a really goodie, yeah. And Melodics is set up beautifully to play into this as well. It's about recording yourself, right? You can, I mean, using a metronome is super important, right? We all know that. Or playing to music, playing to something that is in time. Um, for me, it was definitely using a metronome when I was playing examples and exercises, but I would always, always, always record myself when I was playing the music, and I would go back and listen. And there were a lot of times where I thought I was playing really well, and I would go back and listen, and I was not even close. And so there's an old saying called "the tape doesn't lie," and that's true. You know, you go back and listen, and it's like, okay, that's the accurate reflection of what just happened. So record yourself all the time. Now, with Melodics, obviously you're recording into the system and it's providing real-time feedback. So you're even getting a better experience there, right? Because you're getting the feedback as you go. I didn't have that except for when I was actually playing in front of a teacher. Um, but yeah, play, record yourself, and get that feedback. That's the best way to do it, I think.
Nice. And then actually, I'm interested just in, in your performance history. You've performed with so many amazing artists.
Mhm.
What typically do you like to play to a click, or do you like to play totally without one? What's your go-to for performance?
Yeah, it's funny. I think when I'm playing live, I would prefer to play without. When I'm playing in the studio, I kind of like playing with, you know, because obviously with this in the studio, it's a different environment. You know, you might be playing a song a little bit differently, and it really helps to make sure that that track is very clean. Um, Whereas if you're playing live, you might want to take some liberties, right? You might want to um, not rush or speed, but you might want to play on top on a certain section to provide some energy, or you might want to lay it back a little bit or whatever. Sorry, excuse me.
That's all right.
And so, um, you know, I'd love to have the ability to do that. Although I'm not afraid to play with a click live, and I've done it a million times. I like a little bit more freedom live, but I prefer it almost in the studio.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think the answer there is that using something like Melodics is just so epic for timing. It gives you that perfect
Yep.
feedback, and then hopefully that means that when you're playing live and you're playing without a click, you've got that rhythm built in. So, hey,
Yep.
listen, Mike, we're at 1 minute to the hour, and I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It was a really cool hour. I really enjoyed hearing your insights and hearing your history with all of these drum techniques and artists and genres and everything. It's just been really cool. So, on behalf of the Melodics community, yeah, just want to say a massive thanks. It's been a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Mike, and thanks everybody for showing up and having such great questions. It's been a blast. I can't believe an hour's gone by so
I
fast.
know, right? I
Um,
know.
anytime would be happy to come back and, you know, always love talking drums and helping people. So anytime.
Nice. Well, thank you very much, Mike, and thanks to everyone in the community for all the awesome questions. It's been really insightful. It's always awesome to connect with you all, and thank you very much. So, thanks everyone. All right. See you.
Bye.